The plan was simple, at least in his mind. Hide the wealth, dress like a man with nothing, and find someone who would love him for who he truly was. But what he didn't expect was that the only person who would stand by him would be someone everyone else had already turned their backs on. In a world driven by appearances, one quiet connection was about to reveal a truth far deeper than anyone imagined. He arrived in the small town without the usual signs of status that followed him everywhere else. No expensive clothes, no polished introductions, just a worn jacket, simple boots, and a story that made him seem like an ordinary man looking for work. People noticed him, but not in the way he was used to. Conversations were short, interest was minimal, and curiosity quickly faded. It was exactly what he wanted, yet it felt different experiencing it firsthand. For the first time, he wasn't being welcomed, he was being overlooked. Days turned into weeks, and his experiment began to reveal more than he expected. Same people who once admired him from a distance now barely acknowledged his presence. Invitations never came, and conversations rarely lasted beyond necessity. It wasn't harsh or cruel, it was quiet indifference. And in that silence, he began to understand something he had never fully grasped before. Attention had always been tied to what he had, not who he was. Then there was her. She moved through the town with a quiet strength that stood apart from everything else. People kept their distance, their judgments subtle but constant. She wasn't included, wasn't celebrated, wasn't even truly seen. Yet she carried herself with a calm dignity that never wavered. He noticed her not because she demanded attention, but because she did. There was something real in the way she spoke, in the way she worked, in the way she existed without needing approval. Their first conversation was simple, almost accidental. A shared moment, a few words exchanged without expectation. But it stayed with him. She didn't treat him differently because of what she assumed about him. She spoke to him as if he mattered, as if his presence was enough. It was a small thing, but it stood out in a way nothing else had. And for the first time since arriving, he felt something genuine, something unfiltered by status or perception. As they spent more time together, their connection grew naturally. There were no grand gestures, no attempts to impress. Just conversations, shared experiences, and a growing understanding of each other. He found himself opening up in ways he hadn't expected, sharing thoughts he usually kept hidden behind confidence and control. Listened, not with judgment, but with quiet empathy. And in her presence, he felt something he hadn't felt in a long time, authenticity. Meanwhile, the town continued to see her through the same lens it always had. Whispers followed her, assumptions lingered, and opportunities seemed just out of reach. But she didn't let it define her. She continued forward, steady and resilient, focused on what she could control rather than what others believed. Watching her, he began to question not just the town's perspective, but his own past assumptions as well. There were moments when he almost revealed the truth. Times when the weight of his secret felt too heavy to carry. Something held him back, not fear, but a desire to understand what this connection truly meant without the influence of his wealth. He wanted to know if what they were building could stand on its own. And so he stayed silent, choosing honesty in his actions rather than his circumstances. One evening, as they sat together in a quiet corner of the town, the conversation shifted. She spoke about her experiences, about the way people saw her, about the challenges she had faced without ever letting them define her worth. Her words weren't filled with bitterness, but with clarity. She understood the world around her, but she refused to let it shape who she was. Listening to her, he felt a deep respect grow, one that went beyond admiration. The more time they spent together, the more he realized how much he had been missing in his own life. The relationships he had formed before often felt transactional, built on expectations rather than understanding. This was different. This was real. And with that realization came a difficult question: what would happen when the truth came out? Eventually, that moment arrived. Not through planning, but through circumstance. Truth surfaced in a way neither of them could control, and the reaction was immediate. Shock, confusion, and a sense of betrayal filled the space between them. She didn't question his intentions, but she questioned the choice he had made to hide something so significant. For her, honesty had always been a foundation. Now, that foundation felt uncertain. He explained, not to justify, but to be understood. He spoke about his reasons, about his desire to find something real in a world that often felt artificial. Admitted his mistakes, acknowledging that the way he chose to approach it had consequences he hadn't fully considered. It wasn't a perfect explanation, but it was honest. And in that honesty, there was a chance, not for immediate resolution, but for understanding. Time passed, and the distance between them slowly began to close. It wasn't easy, and it wasn't quick, but through conversations, patience, and a willingness to listen, they found their way back to something stronger than before. The truth, once a barrier, became a foundation. And with it came a deeper connection, one built not just on moments, but on trust. Town, too, began to change in small ways. Perceptions shifted, not overnight, but gradually. People started to see what had always been there: her strength, her integrity, her value. It wasn't about proving anyone wrong. It was about allowing the truth to be seen, in its own time, in its own way. In the end, what started as an experiment became something far more meaningful. It wasn't just about finding love, it was about understanding it. About seeing beyond appearances, beyond assumptions, and beyond the limitations that society often places on people. And in that understanding, both of them found something they hadn't been looking for, but had needed all along. Because sometimes, the most genuine connections come from the most unexpected places. Sometimes, the person the world overlooks is the one who sees you most clearly.